He is the man who sits with Donald Trump, makes phone calls with him, that sort of thing, is trying to get the tariffs done. We haven't seen him in a long time. I mean, the guy's waving everywhere. The big alarm was set here when he didn't show up for the latest BRICS meeting. And believe me, he's one of the engineers of BRICS. His party is as well. Question is why? There's a big military purge going on. And Bill Walton, great talk show host, by the way, not the coach, right? Just kidding. Great talk show host. He's here with us to talk about it. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I wish I were the basketball coach. That's a fun job when you win.
That's true. I'll tell you what, though, it's great to have you here, and I'm sitting in for Tony Schaefer as the lead here, and of course, cousin Vinny's sitting in for me. So we're all here today.
Hi, Vinny.
So it's been a big game of where's Waldo, or where's Winnie, should I say, right?
Right. Where's Xi?
Where's Winnie?
Where's Ping?
Well, are we in China? Or are we in?
But again, sometimes communist leaders disappear. It's a fact of life. They're away. Sometimes they're just put aside for a little bit, maybe benched for a while. But a lot of the times, these same people are still trotted out as a face for major meetings. We're talking about a nation that's just had a major military purge. So you're talking about behind the scenes, a major leadership purge overall. And now we see that Xi Jinping, the face of the country, was not at the recent BRICS meeting. This is where he's always there. He was at every one of them before this, if I'm correct. What do you think's going on, Bill?
Well, it's opaque. You remember back in the bad old days with Russia and communist Russia, the Soviet Union, and we'd look at pictures of the Politburo every time they trotted everybody out, and everybody would look at the picture to see who was in and any new faces. And that's, China doesn't even give us that. So, and, they've got a 24-member Politburo of which Xi is, he is the dominant guy. And, what we know is not a lot, but there's a lot of atmospherics, and the atmospherics is that there have been changes in a lot of the personnel. I won't say a lot, some personnel. And at the Politburo meeting this month, there are 24 members. One of them has been mysteriously disappeared. I think he's the top general since March, and that's as far as we know, that seat hadn't been replaced. But the thing about Xi is that he is, his father was a massively important communist functionary under Mao, and he adores his father, and he learned from his father. Of course, his father was purged for about 25 years before he was brought back into Mao's orbit, but that didn't seem to deter Xi. He's a seriously dedicated communist, and studied the Soviet Union and felt like the Soviet leaders didn't do a good enough job purging people around them to hold power. Although, that certainly wasn't true of Stalin, but later on it was. Anyway, so he's there. We think he's still firmly in charge. But the thing to keep in mind is that nature takes its course. Xi's 72 years old. There have been a lot of reported issues but not determined, with aneurysms and strokes and things like that. And he's 17 years old, and he is a heavy smoker. So that's something to keep your eye on. He may disappear himself just because of that. So anyway, that's what we know. And there's a lot more, and there's a lot more going on in the Chinese economy and society, and their introduction of robots to replace people. A lot going on there.
You bring up a great point here that, again, we can talk about and speculate all we want here, but that sometimes the most obvious solution is the right one. And you're saying it right here. The idea is that maybe Xi's health is not as well as it should be. The Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, needs to make sure that he's not seen as weak, make sure that he's not seen as infirmed, or seen as, let's just say, Joe Biden Far East version, if you will. No, look, the whole world laughed at that guy for years. China does not want that. They don't want to be known as the guy with a doddering old fool as president. We were the guys that way.
Well, you know, they dye their hair in China. The leaders want to be seen with gray hair.
I
And
do.
I haven't looked at any recent pictures of him. I think he's still doing that. They want to project. Remember when Mao jumped in the river and swam when he was, you know, practically dead, and to prove that he was not dead? Well, that, you know, that's the mentality they've got.
Well, and again, here's something funny too. I was hoping to create a nice, really cool picture on Chat GTP for you. This is relevant to the discussion here. I was going to have a picture of. I was trying to get them to create a photo or a merged photo of Xi Jinping with "Where's Waldo." You see, that's important here. That works. Chat GPT would not do that.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
They wouldn't even let me do Winnie the Pooh, by the way. But the fact is, uh, there is a serious issue when it comes to our technology, our big tech sector here, and the Chinese Communist Party. They have inroads in everywhere. So I just want to give you a side note there. I find that interesting as well.
Well, I argue with ChatGPT all the time. It won't give me answers I want, particularly with economics. And I say, look, don't stop giving me the Berkeley version of economics. How about the Austrian school? And you know what? It comes back and says, yeah, you're right. There's bias in my analysis, and here's another way to look at it. So sometimes you win an argument with those things.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I should ask them. I should ask
Well,
them.
I'm a geek.
Right, I'm with you.
I don't do that. I haven't tried that AI stuff yet. I haven't tried it yet.
Well,
I may look
I
into it.
highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun once you get into the talking back and forth to it.
well, here's a question I'll ask ChatGTP, and I'll ask you guys too. Who's worse, the 2025 Colorado Rockies, the 2024 Chicago White Sox, the 1962 Mets, or the 1899 Cleveland Spiders? I think the four worst teams I could think of are off the top of my head.
I've got to go with the Mets. You know, I lived for a long time in New York. They were only because of Casey Stengel. He made them even more colorful as a loser.
Oh yeah. Ron Hunt told me the story about how he was actually he got his chance to play. He was, I believe, it was 63. It was like the fourth second baseman, but he was on the bench at this point. Fourth one they tried that year. Finally, when it was his time, Casey looks at him and says, "Hey, 33, you ready to play?" He goes, "Yep." Gets him out there. Ron Hunt was great. That was the year I think he was hit by pitch 50 times. If not, that was the next year. Ron Hunt's amazing. We gotta get him on. That guy's cool. But anyway, let's go back to the serious stuff. Although I will say this about the Spiders. I said this before on this program. The St. Louis Cardinals owners bought the Cleveland team. They took all the good players from Cleveland, put them on St. Louis, changed the name to the Perfectos, and gave all the scraps to Cleveland. That's how Cleveland wound up 20 and 134 that year in 1899. And no matter how good they thought the Perfectos were, I think they finished third. But anyway,
Great name.
but again, this happens. Your theory could be right. I mean, what you said could be right, but there are also other things we can look at as well. The Chinese Communist Party may be in the midst of a leadership change overall. We saw a huge military purge. That doesn't normally happen with a country that does not like to show weakness either.
Well, the thing about China is that they've got massive problems. I mean, we're hearing about their progress with DeepSeek and AI, and you know, it all sounds very formidable and threatening, and parts of that is and could be, but they've got a massive real estate problem. You know, they overinvested in real estate, both commercial and residential, and that's been in a deep depression for the last 5 or 6 years, and shows no signs of coming back. And they've financed a lot of all that real estate with local government debt. And their local government debt is enormous. And when you put the local government debt together with the federal debt and throw in a couple other debt numbers, consumer numbers, you know, it's worse than the United States. And their ability to sustain debt is worse than ours. So they've got that problem. And then they've got a population problem where that one child policy worked, which means they don't have any kids. And you know, they valued boys over girls, and so they, you know, lots of girl abortions back in the day, I guess, that's what they did. But anyway, they've got a massive imbalance in their population, and it's scheduled to start shrinking, or projected to start shrinking in the next 20, 30 years, which is, not the way you think of China from the old days, about being this, this endless source of people, and that's not true. And then the other thing that's happening is the workforce is aging, and they've got a lot more people to support on pensions than they can possibly do, and so they've got that problem hanging, and that's just the first sort of top 2 or 3 on the list of horribles they've got to deal with.
So that leads me to the next question. We haven't seen Xi. There was the military purge, and it seems like the current batch of Communist Party leaders is a bit shaky. Is there a, let's just say, next generation, which is looking to seize some power along the way? And again, we're speculating here, but could there be maybe some components of the Communist Party looking to seize control here and squeeze out some longtime leaders, maybe try to make a few changes? And I'm not saying positive ones, but I'm saying changes that, I guess they're trying to make China great again, if you will.
Well, they've got what do they call them? The term wolf warriors. And so, with all regime change, you got to be a little worried that you might get the wrong side of the change. We tend to think of regime change as we'll get somebody kinder and gentler. We could get somebody a lot worse. And, human nature being what it is, you got to believe the younger cohort, the next generation. They've got people in there plotting, what happens next. But in terms of putting your finger on something really tangible, factual, that we know for sure, we just don't. Somebody somewhere knows, but not many of us here in the United States.
Bill Walton's with me here, and so is cousin Vinny on Wake Up Patriots. By the way, insider myself. I was trying to type this, but it's hard for me to type and talk at the same time because I can't do the same. It's finally walking and chewing gum at the same time. That's even harder. But I want to say thank you for that really kind comment of you. Of course, my favorite guy, Tony, will be back in tomorrow. By the way, but here we go. I do want to throw a couple of things out here that many of you may have heard Bill Walton on television or on the radio before. We'd love to have you back and talk about this and some other issues as well. But I got to ask you actually produced a movie with Jerry Lewis?
I did. Yeah.
Wow.
It was Jerry Lewis's last movie. We produced it, 2012, I think, 2013, and the movie was called Max Rose, and it was a story of an aging musician who never really quite made it in the big time, and he discovers something where he thinks his wife may have had an affair with another guy 50 years earlier. At this point, he's 80 years old, and it's a bit of a melodrama. I learned a lot about producing movies from that. And there's something called Final Cut. And we made the film, and I didn't like it. It was just not really an uplifting story. And we got these interviews with Jerry, and we recut it. So we had interviews with Jerry on the set that had him talking about his career and his character and things like that. And we redid the opening with scenes from Dean Lewis and Jerry in 1957. I thought it would be go viral. But anyway, my partner, an Irishman, didn't like that version, and so he took it all out. So we've got a good movie. It's on every streaming channel there is. It was great working with Jerry. He was incredibly vital. The only thing about the movie, it was about old people, and most of our actors were in their 80s. And so we had to have nap runs on the set. You couldn't do much shooting in the afternoon.
That's like me. Vinny, that's like me and Vinny here. We're doing this in the morning because we're early birds. We have to go to bed.
We do it early. Nice and early. The earlier the better.
Early to bed, early to rise. You'll miss all the good TV shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But we had Mort Saul in the movie, and Claire Bloom, and a lot of people that people of our generation might recognize. It's quite a famous cast, and it's really a good movie. It just I like all producers, I thought it could have been better.
Oh, I'm sure.
How was it working with Jerry Lewis? I mean, was he like strict?
he was okay. He was in point of life where he was a nice guy. I mean, he went through a lot of things with drugs and he was a really difficult guy to work with when he was in his prime. But by the time he got around to us, he was just occasionally cranky, but generally willing to work out. I mean, I remember the first meeting with him. My first meeting was he lived in Las Vegas and loved the old mafia haunts in Las Vegas, and he had a Italian restaurant that he liked to go to, and they had a back room, and all the producers, we gathered together to meet Jerry, and he came in, he was wearing his red sweater, and he was, pretty lively, and we started talking. There were about 7 or 8 of us, and exchanging stories, and he sort of got the hint that some of us were worried that whether he was up to the task of making another movie. And so what did he do? He started telling a joke, and then next thing you know, he's standing on his chair telling the joke, and this guy's 80 years old or older, and then he gets on the table and starts dancing around on the table, and we're all up there like this.
See, this is the cool guy I'd like to work with.
It was great. I mean, it was, it was sort of a big FU
Wow.
for those of us that were doubters. And and as it turns out, he was great through the whole movie. He had a lot of stamina, and it was good to work with. But he didn't like to spend any of his own money. I mean, the producers had to cough up with all of that, so we just grinned and bore it, and it was a good experience.
Oh,
I highly recommend it for entertainment value. Trying to produce a feature film, it's a once in a lifetime kind of deal.
Vinny, if you produce a feature film, I'd like at least one cameo in it to play a radio guy so I can look like Ted Baxter. Good morning, good night, and good news. Or better yet, I'm going to do my favorite. I'm Gary Owens, and this is Laugh-In. I was a big Gary Owens guy. And my other favorite voice guy was oh my gosh, the guy that did Match Game. Yeah, and all the game shows. That's right. I loved all those guys. Bill, I also want to, I love doing the prep for this show because when Tony says, Chris, I can't do the show today, I do even more. So I go down a few rabbit holes. I like your Substack, and and since we have a few minutes left, I just want to highlight one article you had. And I know the Inflation Enhancement Act from the Biden administration is old, but I want to take this from December of 2024. The Art of Political Deception, masters from history who would admire the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm going to, by extension, admire the way the media works today and admire the way the Democrat Party has manipulated a lot of that and the public over the years via, well, let's just say, a team effort. You go to some great figures in history, and I'm impressed with your knowledge of this and everything here. Augustus Caesar would have loved the Inflation Enhancement Act. Same with Cardinal Richelieu, and read about this guy. All right, just do that. Peter Metternich. Okay, yes, that makes sense because he built some kind of crazy system there. But I also understand that Vladimir Lenin. I'm going to say Stalin. I'm going to add him to that as well. But your points are here. Oh, Woodrow Wilson. That's right. I forgot about that. And here's one thing Woodrow Wilson and the Biden administration had in common. They both told when their president was infirmed or cognitively unable to perform the duties of a president, when the vice president knocked on the door and said, "I'm here to help out," they said, "Go away, go home, only show up for photo ops." The common thread was brought this all together. The Biden administration of mishmashy wokies that controlled the auto pen and these historical figures. They used crisis rhetoric to justify massive changes. By the way, let's go Xi Jinping here too, and the CCP. Create complex systems of dependency to prevent reform. And they have people get upset and take to the streets when somebody actually pulls that. Maintain democratic appearances while centralizing control, which was done especially under the pretty package of Obama. Use technical complexity to obscure fundamental changes. Label initiatives as solving the problems, but they're the ones who made them worse or even caused them.
Well, the one point there that bears on what we just saw with the big, beautiful bill is that it create dependencies, get people dependent on you as the provider of all things good. And what the problem the Republicans had was that there's a lot in the bill that we wanted to cut, but it was it was pork going back to districts and states, and so they wouldn't toe the line on that. And so we've got a lot, and that's true for both parties and all the states and everything. And so the problem we've got with cutting stuff right now is we've got so many constituencies that are counting that have gotten used to getting that money. You know, remember ethanol, when they put that in place, all of a sudden Iowa farmers became you know, big government Democrats. And then you know, the same things happened with the green energy, with wind and solar, and a lot of they're smart enough with the Inflation Reduction Act to put a lot of those new facilities that were financed into red states. And so they built a red state constituency for some of those bad ideas. So yeah, you go to history, go to look at these mastermind guys on how they controlled, you know, pulled the strings, controlled the masses. And you know, the history books are right there as a manual for how to do it.
And Bill, we only have got a couple minutes left, and I would really love to have you back and talk about the demise of the dollar at this
Oh yeah.
point. And
Oh, yeah.
Bill, by the way,
It's worth 98 cents. It's lost 98 cents of its value since we created the Federal Reserve. So
absolutely,
let's start with that.
yeah, well, yeah, and it was, and only just a moment ago, it was 3%. It was 3% of the value. Now it's about 2%. This is just,
Right.
it's just going to get worse and worse. We could go the way of Zimbabwe or the Italian lira if that's the case.
Well,
But
we could.
Bill Walton, again, former chairman, by the way, and CEO of Allied Capital Corporation during the really, really good years, especially. So we're going to have you talk about that. Bill, though, where can our listeners, our viewers here, our patriots, catch the Bill Walton Show?
Pretty much where you found me on Substack. You know, it's interesting you pulled up a written piece. I've been doing a show as well, and I put it on pause for 2 or 3 months to see if I could do some writing in addition. And it's hard to write. I may go back to doing a show. Anyway, you can find me on all the platforms: YouTube, Rumble, Spotify. You know, any place you find your podcast, we're on all those platforms, and plus Substack, and we're easy to find. And the thing about the library, we've got about 250 shows in there, and some of the ones that we did them mostly for evergreen, so you could go back and listen to something. Maybe we did something a couple of years ago, and it still got it still has relevance.
Vinny, Bill, thank you very much for being with me on
Great talking with you.
We're doing this again, Bill. I'd love to have you on. Vinny, you got to do this with us too.
We'll have. Yeah, you didn't talk much, Vinny. I need to get.
Yeah. No, I was listening to you. I was listening to you.
We left Vinny speechless with all the Mam Dammy talk. So
yeah, that guy gets to me.
No, Vinny, did you know that you can't get the feel of what the people think unless you eat rice with your hands?
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that.
I'm not going to try it.
That's a Mamdamyism.
I'm not going to try it.
Yeah, the guy says, the worst thing about Mamdammy eating with his hands outside in the city, it's not that he did a third world practice or ate with his hands. Yeah. It's the fact that his hands were probably all over the dirty subway or something like that, and doorknobs on the way in without washing them. He's eating rice, and that's
sometime we can talk about left hand versus right hand, and you know the Arabs will only eat with their right hand because you don't want to know what they do with their left hand.
Oh, hey-o. I'm usually a sidekick here, so I get to say hey. Bill, Patriots, thank you for being with us today. This is Wake Up Patriots. Tony's back with me tomorrow, and we have a very special guest I cannot disclose yet for Wednesday, but it's going to be a good one.
Excellent.